Listen, before I get to Marci, I really want to ask Carlene and Julie to please take a bow, even though you all can't see them. We've been doing this for 2 months together, and boy, 2 months ago, the world feels like years. You know, we were just going into shelter in place, and as you can see in that little chart, Marci and everybody, decreased sales is a issue for folks. There's been a kind of it was an adjustment period, but decreased sales outnumbered 2 to 1 those who had a problem with increased sales. So, you know, we're still in the soup, but we're going to take a pause with this series just to give everybody a little chance to normalize. We're beginning to return from shelter in place very gingerly here in New Hampshire. We actually went out to dinner the other night, which was amazing. Sitting, of course, 15 feet from anybody else and everybody with masks. But nonetheless, my real point here is to thank Julie and Carlene, who put this whole incredible thing on, and obviously couldn't have been done without you. So thank you both. It's really fitting that we're ending this series with Marci. Because as you remember, the series is called Tales from the Trenches, and it's really stories of overcoming challenges. And, you know, Marci looks 16, but I can tell you she's, you know, got at least 10, she's at least 10 years older than that, because she and I have been at this a long time. And, you know, if there's a word that I could use, well, I think there would be 2 words if I could use to describe you, Marci. One is resilient. Because, you know, you've really been inventing a category. You've been inventing it since before we even knew what to call it. And of course you helped name it. But the other is absolutely determined, which is, you know, the 2 go hand in hand. You have a mission. You are a real role model for me and for lots of your peers, and lots of, up and coming entrepreneurs that, you know, if you don't get it right the first time or things happen outside of your control, then you get up and do it again. And so we're going to let you lead off with your story. And then again, just to remind folks what Julie just said, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A and we will try to have as much of a conversation as we can today. But Marci, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Gary. It's great to be co-creating with you and also to be the grand finale of your summit. And, you know, I've definitely got a lot of bruises and blood to prove out what you said along the way. It's been a long and winding road. And I'll kick off by sharing my story, and then of course we'll go into a Q&A. So I'm going to show you the first slide, which is a snapshot of my journey. And I'm going to take you through that journey and share some of the lessons I've learned along the way, which I continue to learn every single day, which is one of the fun parts about being an entrepreneur. You know, I never look at challenges as obstacles. I look at them as opportunities to get smarter and stronger and better at what I do. So, okay, so I actually, I'm going to take you back to what started this path for me. When I was 16 years old, a girlfriend of mine named Surya gave me a book called Living in the Light by Shakti Gawain. And I was completely inspired. I had this epiphany. I became a vegetarian. And I grew up in South Florida in Boca Raton, which was not exactly the model for progressive living. But, you know, something spoke to me that there's more than what we see. And I just started to dive in. It's my nature. I was the quintessential entrepreneur, wired from the day I was born, the kid with the lemonade stand, you know, as Gary said, you know, persistent, tenacious, passionate, committed. You know, those are definitely characteristics that I embody. So when I read this book, it definitely spoke to the fact that, oh, wait, go back. Not there yet. Spoke to the fact that I'm very much an entrepreneur at heart. And I met the founder of Aveda very early in my career. And, you know, he inspired me in a way to kind of set the tone for my life path, which was built on the 5 Ps: people, planet, profit, passion, and purpose, right? Clearly, for me, it was always about, if I was going to go down that business path, I was going to do it with purpose. And so in 1990, when I was 3 years old, I created a school in New York City out of my New York City apartment. This was my first chapter in New York. And the school was, wait, we got to go back 2 slides. Boop, boop. 3 slides. Backwards, Carlene. So the beginning. We're going back to the beginning. We're starting from the beginning. So there you go. So my first company, Gulliver's Living and Learning Center, was inspired by Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. And Jonathan Swift also has defined one of the quotes that I just have embraced my whole life, which is, vision is the art of seeing things invisible. And for me, once you set a vision, you have to be willing to twist and turn and pivot. And that's probably my greatest learning. And I say to all entrepreneurs today, if you're not prepared to ride a roller coaster and have that seatbelt on, this is not the ride for you, because there is never a straight line in the world of business. So the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which many people know today, has certified over 85,000 people in 135 countries around the world. And our health coach certification program at Gulliver's, that's what it became. So, I was very much in the trenches of the organic food movement when everybody in the organic food movement knew each other. And I was teaching classes on organic and natural foods cooking and using products like Eden Foods and Arrowhead Mills. And what I realized as I moved through that first chapter of my career was that it was really, just like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that was my starting point. My most basic need was talking about food. And the reason I started it was because so many people were saying to me, as I was cooking my way through UC Berkeley Haas Business School and cooking for people at my investment banking firm, they were saying, wow, how do you know this? Where did you get this? How do you do this? And I realized, God, our most basic and most important talent as humans is to learn how to take care of our health and well-being, right? But yet, where do you go to learn that? And that was the catalyst for starting the school. So from there, I found, I met the founder of Aveda, as I said, Horst. Horst was obviously, right beginning of being in the trenches of Aveda. And we decided to connect the dots between food and beauty. So the school opened the very first Aveda concept salon in New York City. We started to teach people about organic and natural beauty products. And through that process, it sort of very much dawned on me that this is a lifestyle. This isn't just isolated to like, you are what you eat. This is about embracing a different mindset, a different level of consciousness. And that sort of led me through a few different kind of points in time to have the realization that you can't support food and beauty without supporting fiber and textiles. One of my very favorite quotes is from the book, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And he says, work is love made visible, right? So if you love your work, it's not work, it's love. And I loved fashion. My big pedigree in fashion is I got best dressed in high school, but I was a person that everybody wanted to go shopping with because I just had an innate sense of style. I love fashion. I love the creative side. I also did calligraphy and oil painting and pottery. And so for me, fashion was just this incredibly powerful vehicle to take what I had learned in food and beauty and apply it to a new category where I could potentially activate a whole new level of mainstream audience that would be less afraid to embrace organic and sustainable fashion as food. In fact, when I took my kids to see Food Inc., I remember them saying, Mommy, how come so many people are walking out right now? And I said, because they don't want this information. They don't want to know this, because if they know this, it means they're going to have to do something about it, because you can't turn information off, right? So I started my journey in the quote eco-fashion space by coining and trademarking the term eco-fashion in 1995. And everybody I spoke to thought I was absolutely crazy, that people would never buy into this idea. I sold the school to my business partner. I decided to focus on sustainable fashion and eco-fashion and organic fashion. And it became apparent to me that I had to bridge two very dichotomous worlds. The world of natural and organic and health and wellness, which is really my roots, with the world of fashion. So I would go from like Expo West, which I've been going to for 30 years. And I had to marry that with magic. And most of you might not know what magic is. It's the Expo West of the fashion industry. And it was almost like the schizophrenia, right? Like on the one hand, I had people saying, I've got your back. And on the other hand, I had people saying, watch your back, right? So to me, it was, how do I bridge the tree hugger and the fashionista and the tribe and the boardroom? Because that was who I was, and I subscribed to both of those worlds. So I'm gonna go deeper as we go on today, but just kind of keeping it with the chronology of my path. So I started a brand called Under the Canopy. I got very involved in the textile exchange, the Organic Trade Association. I started to build this movement, and I helped develop what's known today as the GOT standard, the Global Organic Textile Standard. I helped develop Fair Trade USA's Fair Trade Textile Standard. And then fast forward, and I'm gonna, again, take you into the why I moved from chapter to chapter as we move on. But I started a company called ECOfashion Corp in 2019, which was really the manifestation of my 30-year career, bridging all of these worlds, changing the world of style while I'm styling the world of change. And I pinch myself every day now as I'm around millennials and major conferences where everybody's starting to talk about sustainable fashion and drinking the Kool-Aid. And, it was not an easy path. It was definitely an uphill battle. A lot of naysayers. Try raising money when you're not only a woman, 25 years ago, but you're talking about something that people like look at you with, cross-eyed, and at the same time thinking fashion is such a risk. Why would I move in this? But shockingly, or not shockingly, my first investors were all people out of the natural products industry. Michael Funk, the founder of United Natural Foods, Mark Retzloff, as well as, people like Jeff Hollander and Horst Reckelbacher. They all helped support, my inception into this movement. And then along the way, as you see at the bottom, I've also founded many other companies, just kind of in my quote spare time, blessing and the curse of an entrepreneur. I have a consulting agency today with my husband called Beyond Brands that we co-founded in 2016. And our first brand that we launched within Beyond Brands, with which I was one of the co-founders and also the CMO up until 2019, is called Good Catch. So I've had my fingers and toes in both food and fiber and fashion every step of the way, including an 8-year run on the board of directors of the Organic Trade Association. And today I serve as a trustee on the Organic Center board as well. So next slide. Next slide. Okay. So quickie, just to say, my mission has been to revolutionize consumer products, particularly fashion, through education, which is why I have this slide up. I am a relentless educator. It's something that, philosophically, serving others is serving myself. I love teaching. I love mentoring. I love speaking, and that's probably why I'm here today. And I've spoken all over the world on an eco lifestyle. Next slide. I've collaborated with many figures and individuals such as Dr. McCullough. I opened for Al Gore. I've just been very active in consumer and trade. And so again, my mission is to revolutionize the consumer products world through education, inspiration, next slide, innovation, which this slide just sort of demonstrates that I have been really trying to figure out from the beginning how to reinvent the fashion industry. So for people who aren't familiar with fashion, a typical supply chain is that a brand or a retailer goes to a factory and says, hey, I want to make this product. Here's my tech pack. You do it all and send it to me. Here's my money, right? It's a very sort of unilateral relationship. But what they don't know is that finished textile has probably traded hands anywhere from 7 to 10 times in the supply chain, starting from the raw materials. In the case of cotton, then it's ginned, then it's spun, then it's knit or woven, then it's cut, then it's sewn, then it's dyed, then it's printed, then it's packaged. It's just like this endless list. And I thought, wait a minute, if I go to a factory and I say, hey, this is what I want to make organic and sustainable fashion, they would look at me like, wait, what are you talking about? We would have no clue how to do that. So I actually had to innovate and shift the paradigm of this business model, start in the trenches and go right to the farmers. And so I've been talking about the farmer story and transparency and authenticity and, for the past 25 years. Obviously now it's a hot topic. But that's my happy place. I say, being in the farms with my farmers is like water for chocolate for me. It's where it all starts. It's the soul of what I do. Next slide. And then there's collaboration, which is kind of the fourth piece in this puzzle. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't partner with the most amazing NGOs like the Rodell Institute or companies like Whole Foods. So in 2005, March 3rd, 2005, I launched a 2,000 square foot under the canopy store-in-store at Whole Foods Markets. Thank you, Walter Robb, for believing in me. And it was just one of the most exciting moments of my life and certainly a pivotal juncture. It put us on the map. We also, at the same time, which I don't have here, we launched in every Aveda store in the country as well as in the world with organic cosmetic bags and washcloths and eye masks and headbands. So my first two customers, wholesale customers, were Whole Foods and Aveda, which certainly were good seals of endorsement. But then we got seen by companies like Target and Macy's and Bed Bath & Beyond and Spiegel and all these other companies. Suddenly I found myself in the C-suites of so many major retailers trying to convince them why they needed to play in the game of organic and sustainable fashion. Next slide. Okay, so we're gonna go back and we're gonna talk about Under the Canopy. We're going to talk about it within the context of my book, which is behind me, called Eco-Renaissance, which the tagline is co-creating a stylish, sexy, and sustainable world. And in the book, I connect the dots from art to food to wellness to beauty to fashion to business, because they're all very much interconnected. And the realizations that I had as I was on this journey and now reinventing myself from food into fiber and fashion and textiles was that you have to connect all of these different popular culture sectors, and then you also have to connect agriculture to popular culture to tell a truly holistic story. So eco-renaissance, the word means, because of course a renaissance is a rebirth. So I would say the eco-renaissance is the rebirth of humanity and the awakening that we're all part of a global, interconnected ecosystem where, all the spokes in the wheel of change are going to be driven by 5 key pillars. The DNA of this movement: community, creativity, consciousness, collaboration, and connection. So given that we're in this kind of crazy surreal time with COVID-19, I've never felt more than now that the eco-renaissance is like in our faces, right? We are all being forced to reset our priorities and sort of look at our lives. And we might not be able to go outside, but we can go inside. We can go look at what matters within us at that soul level. And I would call that home, right? It's very metaphoric for where we are. We're actually at home. And so, for me, starting Under the Canopy was this idea that we all live under the canopy of the planet's ecosystem together. We're all in this together. In Native American philosophy, you know, the ozone layer protects life in future generations, that canopy. And in the rainforests of the world, which create most of the oxygen that humans depend on, that top layer of the rainforest is called the canopy, right? So we all live under the canopy of the planet's ecosystem together. And for me, the premise of the book, which is the premise of my life work, is through the lens of design, we can change the world, right? So if you lead with great design, in food, that's taste. In beauty, it's functionality and scent. In fashion, it's style and quality. But you can't compromise that. You have to say, buy this product or support this brand because it's amazing. And oh, by the way, it's also organic, fair trade, recycled, sustainable, ethically made, so and so and so. And as Albert Einstein said, we can't solve today's problems with the same consciousness that created them. So we have to change the way we think about fashion and home textiles. Most people understand we are what we eat, and they're still like, what? I don't understand why organic and sustainable textiles matter. But when you pull the curtain back and you unveil the human and environmental impacts of the fashion and textile industry, they blow away the food world. 20% of the world's freshwater pollution comes from textile treatment and dyeing. 10% of the world's carbon footprint comes from the fashion industry. 3% of the world's agriculture is cotton, but anywhere from 15 to 20% of the most harmful insecticides and up to 5 to 10% of the most toxic pesticides are being used on the cotton industry. It's one of the biggest users of Roundup, which of course contains glyphosate, and it's one of the most heavily sprayed industries in agriculture. So while it's all well and good that we're supporting organic food, right? And in India, they don't even allow GMO seeds anymore in organic food crops. But cotton is rampant with GMO seeds in India, and thereby drifting into agriculture and really starting to contaminate the whole system. Plus, of course, organic methodologies mean we have to rotate crops together, and cotton is a very important crop in that rotation. And when I learned that 60% of a cotton plant is going into the food stream for feed, for dairy and products like dairy makes, or in oil. So if you buy breads and snack products, start to read the labels. You often will see cottonseed oil in those ingredient lists. And so if you're not supporting organic cotton, that means you're getting an extremely toxic seed that is ridden with, carcinogenic chemicals, right? So as I learned this, I thought, wait a minute, why don't people know about this, And I'm starting to align my personal and professional values. And I'm saying, wait, I want to go beyond food. And again, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what's the next basic need? Shelter, clothing, right? And that sort of led me to, driving under the canopy. And because of my relationships coming out of the food world and having, been endorsed by Aveda and then ultimately Whole Foods, it was just I would say my wheelhouse is connecting food and fashion. And they're very much interconnected. So now going forward, next slide. Next.
Marci, I assume you'll talk to us about some of the challenges of
yes. Okay. So we can go into that now. Yes.
Yeah.
So as we all know, a good entrepreneur is always seeking solutions, right? It's all, it's lots of fun when we're building our businesses and we have, sales and all the good stuff and the marketing and the media. But at the end of the day, I would say I'm a walking cliche, right? Everything happens for a reason. One door closes, another one opens. But also, while I was under the canopy, I had some pretty significant challenges, and I can speak to those right now. So first of all, fulfillment. So we were a mail order catalog for the first 8 years of Under the Canopy. And what I've learned is you have to partner with companies that understand, appreciate, and potentially and hopefully share your core values. Back, 25 or 20 years ago, that wasn't so easy for me. So I partnered with a company that was, fulfilling for Coca-Cola. I thought, great, they know what they're doing. They got the big guys. Unfortunately, I was the victim of under the canopy of a Y2k disaster. Most people, maybe even on this call, don't know what Y2k was, but when all the computer systems turned over and, we kind of got stuck in the fact that all of a sudden our customers were being shipped, multiple times for the same products or charged, the wrong amounts and so on and so on. Anyway, we ended up, and it was my first sort of big, learning. We ended up in a lawsuit because they kept trying to make us go away. They kept trying to push us, out of this, like, oh, they're these tiny little company. They don't, they're eco. They're never going to do anything. And I was like, you don't know who you're messing with, right? Like, I'm definitely, true spirited. Like, I'm on a mission. You're not going to stop that. Anyway, fast forward, we did prevail. And thank God. But that was, it planted the seed for me that they didn't get what I was doing. They didn't understand it. They thought we were just sort of an afterthought. So in the end, I now am way more discerning when I pick my partners. The second learning was funding. Because the Institute for Integrative Nutrition was self-funded by my partner and I didn't experience the things that I experienced with Under the Canopy, where of course past the angel round and the friends and family, the next round was, to bring on more seasoned investors. And I would say this, that dating is a two-way street, and so is funding. Don't think just because as an entrepreneur you need to raise money that you need to take money from anyone who's willing to give it to you. You should really learn and do your due diligence, just like our investors are doing their due diligence, and understand, what their backgrounds are, what their experiences with other investments are. Talk to other investments if you can. And do not let your investors line your whole board up. That was probably one of the fatal mistakes that I made, is I let one of my key investors basically build my board. And what I soon came to discover as I walked into board meetings and everybody's bread was buttered by the same person, that my voice didn't really matter. And I could have a difference in opinion, and it was almost like, yeah, that's nice, okay. And I kept saying, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. This isn't what I signed up for. I have a very strong vision. What's happening? And then the nail in the coffin was when the Devil Wears Prada got put in as the CEO of my company. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I hired her as a consultant so I could pick her brain on things like, how do you do business with Macy's? I did not pick her, a woman who's never even walked into Whole Foods Market, to be the CEO of my company. And then all of a sudden start telling me that as I was focused on breaking the stigmas of organic fashion, stigma 1, you have to give up style, quality, fit, color, or comfort. Stigma 2, that you have to pay a lot more. Stigma 3, that you don't know it's really organic or sustainable. All of a sudden, it was like, let's do more natural and white. Let's raise our prices because people are paying 40% more for organic food. They'll pay 40% more for organic clothing. Who cares about certification? It costs money. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not okay. So I found myself in this really precarious place where, I was constantly in my own company trying to be heard. And I found that the culture that I was building, and building a company culture is so important to me because it's, you're not teaching by preaching, you're teaching by example. And if the culture isn't walking the talk, how are you then going to emanate that to the rest of the world? Right? So for me, as I was trying to build a culture that was built on team spirit and shared vision and community and connection and collaboration and all the things my book is about, suddenly I had someone at the helm who was very dictatorial and autocratic and, and led through fear and was yelling at everybody all the time. And I was like, oh, this is not okay. And I probably did one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire career of 30 years. Once I decided that, you know what, I've spent so many years building the foundation for this business. And Gary, you'll appreciate what I'm about to say. I've got the milk, or sorry, they've got the milk, but I've got the cow. And, you know, to me, relationships are everything. And so many of the retail relationships and the relationships with media and the relationships with, you know, the customer were because I had so much passion for this and I had so much commitment to this. And I started to feel like, you know, this isn't the right fit for me anymore. And so I threw my hat in the ring as a founder and said, I'm ready for a new chapter, right? And that was not easy. I actually spoke about it in Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg's movement, because it was pretty devastating. And, but, you know, I definitely would say that who I am today is because I was able to endure that shift, that reinvention, that rebirth. And I said, you know what? I've done it. I can do it again. And I held my stock and I, you know, got some other things. But at the end of the day, I was like, I'm ready for the next thing. So on the screen right now, you see MetaWear. And MetaWear was the next chapter for me. But I started it as a very simple seed because a lot of my friends in the organic food and beauty world, you know, the Dr. Bronner's and the Garden of Life's and the Cliff Bars were saying, hey, Marci, we need t-shirts for our marketing campaign or uniforms or giveaways or, you know, different events. And I was like, oh, I can do that. So I figured out how can I partner up with a factory in the US that was doing very toxic chemical manufacturing and create an organic and sustainable division of that factory. And that became MetaWear. But ironically, while I was doing that, and while I was also doing a lot of public speaking and writing and started Beyond Brands and started Good Catch, and I was kind of had my fingers and toes in a lot of other things, I had the opportunity to slowly grow MetaWear, but then also come back to Under the Canopy. There was a company that wanted to buy Under the Canopy, but only if I came back. So I had my sort of chapter 2 in Under the Canopy, kind of my mini version of like Steve Jobs, Howard Schultz. You know, I always say like definitely nowhere near what they did, but I came back to my baby. I got it going again. They lost their way. Unfortunately, you know, I did foresee that was a possibility. And I got it going again, made it strong, had a 4-year consulting deal. And when that deal ended, I said, I'm going all in on my next iteration and my next chapter. So whenever you hit walls, I would just say, don't look at them as these like, you know, scary, crazy stopping points. You know, I mean, look at them as like, oh, this is great. We have our most amazing learnings when we hit walls because that forces us to sort of reflect and dive inside and say like, okay, what worked? What didn't work? If I could do this again, how would I do it differently? You know, what are the things, well, who are the people that I want to align with? And ultimately, you know, that's where it led me. And I started to build MetaWear. And once again, you know, this sort of, the consulting chapter ended, I started to look at MetaWear from the lens of how do I scale this business? And I hit another big wall, frankly. That wall was made in the USA, and this is pre-Trump, was not really ready for scaling. And what I found was going back to my story about, you know, the 7 to 10 hands that a textile can change, when I looked at, you know, how does the supply chain work in the US, I was like growing cotton in Texas, shipping it to South Carolina to be spun, then shipping it to North Carolina to be knit, then shipping it to Pennsylvania to be cut, then shipping it to Virginia to be sewn, then shipping it to be dyed, then coming back to be screen printed. And it was like this crazy disconnected supply chain where everybody was pointing at each other. And if anything went wrong, forget about it. You're like, okay, I'm just, you know, there's no end
ecosystem.
It's just like nobody works together hand in hand, unlike India, where everybody works as a business unit. So even if it's not all under one roof, it's the cousin, the sister, the brother, and they're all like, okay, let's support each other. And that's the way the world needs to work, right? It's not just like the supply chain of a textile. So, you know, I was constantly reminded of, how do I do this right? And now I'll just fast forward. So MetaWare is a turnkey, plug and play, kind of like Buildable. When you go into a restaurant and you're like, you pick the menus. Menu 1, what story do you want to tell? Is it organic, fair trade, recycled, cradle to cradle, made in USA? Menu 2, what products do you want to make? Is it apparel or home? Menu 3, what, volumes and margin goals and lead times and all of that. And menu 4, what is your label? And we do mostly private label. So I'm going to keep moving on so we leave lots of time for questions.
Yeah, Marci, probably because we're getting into that time now, maybe you can connect the dots with sort of lessons from one that inform the next and maybe bring us to the present.
Sure. Okay. So first of all, to this day, and I'll just say MetaWare segued to become ECOfashion Corp. MetaWare is one pillar in a company where we call ourselves a greenhouse of brands, kind of the old school fashion house of brands. And we have a number of different brands in there, which I'm going to give a touch on real quickly. But the lessons that I've learned and that I apply every step of the way, from IIN to Under the Canopy to ECOfashion Corp. Number 1, stay lean. I don't care how much money that you raise. I've never changed my philosophy of bootstrapping and being able to discern the difference between what are the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. And I treat my investors' money no differently than I treat my own money, which is, do I really need to do that? How can I do that better? How can I get more bang for the buck? And I watch people raise, these exorbitant amounts of money and just blow through it. And I'm like, why? How does a company that raised $250 million go out of business? Holy moly. Like, God, what I would do with $250 million. But, I try to raise little bits at a time in order to build my valuation, and then ultimately, obviously, minimize my dilution. And part of that is, from Under the Canopy, having lost control of my company was fatal for me, right? It was so devastating that I have to say, like, in my gut, like, I just want to make sure that if not just me, my team, that we maintain that control of our company so that we're able to make the critical decisions and not compromise the brand's promise to our customers, right? That's critical. Second, as I mentioned earlier, always be ready to pivot, and another example right now, our newest brand in ECOfashion Corp, which is called Yes And, was launched in February. And we were ready to do this big summit, on like this, welcome to Yes And. Yes, it's everything you want, and it's organic and sustainable and recycled and all the good, yummy stuff. Great media event. We had all the ingredients, but we had to completely shut that idea down because, of course, that was supposed to happen in April. And instead, we pivoted to make it a virtual event on Zoom. And none of us had ever done an event on Zoom before. I mean, now we're all like Zoom fatigue, right? But it was really eye-opening for me and super exciting because we had 1,000 people register, and we were a startup brand. And it was like, wow, we can reach people all over the world. We can actually tell our story. I had 9 panelists, including myself, the sustainability editor of Women's Wear Daily. I had a bunch of celebrities. I had some influencers. I had some other entrepreneurs. And I connected the dots. I had someone from food. I had Robin O'Brien and Susan Black from beauty. So it was really, the feedback, it's still, giving back. And I'm like, whoa. And it cost us almost nothing, right? So like all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, we were going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a live event. And instead we spent probably under $1,000 And we got a huge reach, bigger than we would have had in a live event. We had so much engagement. And it's, again, the media that's coming out of it now. We've been written up in tons of press and British Vogue and Us Weekly and all Life and Style and all these things. And it just, like, it's so fun. And now I'm like, let's make this a regular thing. Okay, so also hiring. Horst always taught me one thing I love, and Horst passed away a few years ago. For those of you who aren't aware, Horst is the founder of Aveda. He wrote the foreword to my book. He was my mentor for 25 plus years and one of my best friends. And always said it's all about the people you surround yourself with. And that, to this day, you know, I have the most amazing team at ECOfashion Corp, the most incredible partners. You know, we share the vision, we support each other. And I would say this, if you have a weak link on your team, don't drag it out. Like, you know, you're not doing them a favor when you keep people on that aren't rising to the occasion. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. You know, I would liken it to the fact that there's a gorgeous dress. You try it on, it doesn't look good on you, but that doesn't mean it doesn't look great on someone else. So just like put it back on the rack, let someone else find it and put it on and move on to the next dress. And, you know, so for me, you know, the hiring process, one of the things I always say is, if you could write your own job description, what would that look like? And I make sure people have passion for what we do. That's super important. And then collaboration. Collaboration, and Horst's birthday was 11/11. So is Leonardo DiCaprio. So is Paul Rice, the founder of Fair Trade. You see the common theme? Really? So it's 1 + 1 = 11. We're stronger together than we are apart. And I talk about this a lot in Eco Renaissance, because we really need to join forces and create win-win relationships. Old school business models are so broken, especially in the fashion business, where everybody's talking at each other. I mean, look at all the people who just abandoned their factories when COVID-19 hit and left their factories liable for millions and millions of dollars worth of product that they couldn't use. I mean, what kind of like human being, company, personal, professional, they're one and the same to me. I want my values. I want to feel good when I go to work every day and know that I'm doing well by doing good.
So,
yeah, go.
Well, I want to ask, so and I want to encourage others to put your questions in now, because we really want to use half our time for that. The very first thing you were saying about Under the Canopy is, it sounded like there were two lessons. There was, first, you weren't very discerning about the who you brought in, right? The investors. And the second is, I think your later lesson was, you know, you were probably burning more cash or needing more than it put you in a weakened position. And now so what I'm trying to understand is, what are you doing now? Like, how have you funded yourself now, and how are you protecting yourself from that obviously terribly painful, but ultimately growthful experience?
Yeah, no, good question. So I think in Under the Canopy, I just was on a mission to grow, grow, grow. And I wasn't thinking about what the ramifications of that growth could be, because I thought, oh, I'll grow, I'll prove to investors I need money, I'll get the money, and I'll keep growing. But what I didn't play into or think about was, what if those investors try to change my course, and then my growth gets stifled, right?
Well, I mean, but that was a matter that they had more ownership, right? I mean,
well, they had the ultimate decision-making power.
Right.
Even if I felt differently than those people,
But I mean, it was a structural issue. You raised more money. You gave up more ownership too soon. Isn't that the?
For sure. And I would say this, if you think about back, 15 years ago, a lot of young, organic, natural companies that were growing sold to the other side. Yeah. And kind of the classic, thing was, they derailed the brand because they didn't understand the culture. They didn't understand the needs, and they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Yeah. And it ultimately compromised. In my case, I would say, even though I didn't sell the company, the people that were coming into the company by virtue of the money that was directing certain people who had better resumes.
A kind of a sale. Yeah.
Truth is, I had never done business with Macy's before. That's true. But I also got us where we were, where Macy's wanted me in the room. And yeah.
Yeah. So today, I mean, you have the good fortune of this accidental discovery that there's much less expensive ways to promote, which I think a lot of folks who've been on this series have experienced. But how did you structure yourself so that wouldn't happen again? What happened with Under the Canopy?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, when I started this company, I pretty much curated my management team, and I picked people that I have had, you know, long time experience with, who I know without a doubt would have my back, and brought them in and gave them equity instead of cash to get this company off its feet. So I would say about 80%, maybe more, 90% of my core, and I have about 20 people on my team, of my core team today are all incentivized with sweat equity. And so because of that, we own the majority, we own the whole company today. But even if we raise capital, I believe that my partners, we all get it. We all see eye to eye. We all have the same, you know, vested interest. And I think they all appreciate the wisdom and the learnings and some of the heartaches that I've enjoyed.
So you haven't had to bring in investors yet?
We've brought in $1 million to date. Okay. And you know, Autumn Bree, who I think is probably listening today, is a dream investor for me. This is a woman who shares my passion. She's been in the natural products industry for, you know, I've known her for 17 years, and she's leaned in without even being paid to help every way she can. So when you talk about an investor who is, you know, really it's beyond the money, like, so amazing, but also she really gets who this company is, what we're trying to do, and she would never try to do anything, I believe sincerely, because we've obviously had such, you know, deep experience together, that she would do anything to compromise that. And I would also say this today, and I'm gonna just kind of, it's a little risky to say, but I would say that as a woman in business, it's very different today than it was 20 years ago. And if today I experienced the things that I was experiencing 20 years ago, I would have sought outside help and you know, on some of the challenges that I faced, that being sort of a lone wolf in the world of raising capital as a woman, you kind of become very vulnerable to situations that aren't healthy and actually can be quite toxic. And that was part of the demise of, you know, my first chapter, was being in situations that I was like, wait a minute, this is not okay. Yeah. And I just wouldn't, it's not what I signed up for, and I will never sell my soul. And that's one thing about my life path and my career, that, you know, this is a journey. This is, the minute that I start to feel cancer, you know, in my own vision, like that's a sign that it's not working, right? And that's what I experienced. So I think having, you know, more female investors as a woman is also very rewarding.
And are you intending to raise capital at this point, or you're?
So I actually was just, I mean, we're on track to hit our first year numbers, which are, you know, pretty significant. And our momentum right now is incredible, which I haven't gotten to the other two verticals, but yes, I was just kicking off the first week of March. I had all kinds of investor meetings at Expo West set up. Of course, Expo West didn't happen. I had a few of those meetings in LA, and I'm going to resume the funding coming out the other side of COVID-19. But you know, we didn't let go. Nobody's, you know, gone away in our company. We're in good shape. We're actually, so actually, if you want to, I don't know if you want to.
Go ahead. No, let's let you finish about the two verticals. I think you should get that out there.
So Carlene, can you put up the next slide, please? Okay, reset. So this is a farm project I started 2 years ago, that the acronym for Regenerate the Environment, Society, and Economy Through Textiles. And I'll just touch on this because when one of the things about Under the Canopy was we were starting at the farm level. And so the deeper you are in the trenches with your farmers, the more you can tell their story, make them the hero. And, and since the MetaWare business model is all about source to story, and the regenerative movement to me was very confusing. I got involved, 4 years ago when it was just starting. And what I learned was there was one camp that was all about organic, building on top of it, the ROC model that, of course, Bronner's and Rodale, and which I'm a huge fan and I love, but less than 1% of the world's agriculture is organic. So basically that means that if you're going to talk about regenerative agriculture, you're going to start at a tiny little fraction of agriculture. Then there's this other camp that's like not even talking about, GMOs and chemical inputs, and they're just like, we need to rebuild the soil. But then like not taking into consideration that we're like, the reason we're where we are is because we've destroyed and depleted our soil and it no longer can sequester carbon because it's become dirt. So how do we marry those worlds and create a lever? And so reset is to reset agriculture, take conventional cotton farmers off of conventional cotton where they're, for those of you who haven't heard this, in India, every half an hour, a conventional cotton farmer is committing suicide because they're stuck on this conventional system with on this pesticide treadmill. And it's devastating. And they're taking 50% plus interest loans with banks in partnership with the seed and chemical companies in order to be able to sustain this business model, which makes no sense because they're destroying their soil, they're destroying their health and wellness and their livelihoods along the way. So Reset helps them get off that system, takes them through the 3-year transition of organic, and we'll have parallel tracks going at all times of organic and in transition to organic. So next slide. And sort of that led me to the concept of not farm to table, but farm to home, right? So I kind of rolled the dice and filed a trademark and fortunately got it. And I took the concept and the name to QVC, a company that has 100 to 200,000 people a minute watching that show. And I said, okay, how do I educate the masses? Because all the people like in our world, they're starting to learn about organic and sustainable fashion and fiber and textiles. But I want to talk to like the everyday person and teach them it's not about why would you buy organic, it's why wouldn't you buy organic? And if I can give you everything you want in the way of being accessible, authentic, and affordable, high quality, well-designed product, and I can tell that story. And oh, by the way, it's free of all the harmful toxins that all these other products are made of. Why wouldn't you support this? And we've sold out of our first collection. We're now, unfortunately our product is stuck in India and just starting to open back up now. But we've got a lot of new product coming in 2020. We're actually also venturing into apparel and food with QVC. So this lifestyle brand is a further validation that this movement is about a lifestyle. It's not just about you are what you eat. It's you are what you eat, you are what you wear, you are what you think, you are who you hang out with, you are, everything you put in, on, and around your body. It's all about energy, right? And then next slide. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And then this is the kind of grand finale, which is the opening chapter of my book. The introduction is all about yes, and yes, it's everything you want. And in our case with fashion, style, quality, fit, color, comfort, hand. It's not crunchy, frumpy, boxy, beige, and boring. And it's affordable. And it's organic, sustainable, ethical. And you can trace it through our GOTS certification. All of our products are certified by the Global Organic Textile Standard. So there's full transparency. So you can look good, feel good, and do good in the world. And that's kind of the yes and really sums up the way I see the world, which is why I kicked off my book with it.
So, Marci, it sounds like you're sort of personifying this word pivot that you talked about. So I'm just curious, and for the folks listening in, what have been the lessons of the last 2 months? You went in, you were roaring out to the starting gates. You were going to hit the investors hard. You were going to be doing this big event. Boom. Okay. Like you said, you hit a wall, so you pivot. Do you see lessons that are enduring in terms of where you're going to go forward that have changed your business plan?
Always.
strategy?
I mean, I think
No,
for
but
this,
right now.
yeah, right now, yes. I think I'll say this. What's really exciting to me about what's happening is rather than meeting it with resistance, and I'm not going to like minimize the fact that there's a lot of suffering and a lot of people have you know, lost loved ones, and that's heart-wrenching, no question. But I think for me, this idea of reset, which is happens to be the name of our project, is so apropos right now, because I think, you know, this is an incredibly exciting opportunity for all of us as entrepreneurs to pull back. I mean, for me, I travel all the time. I'm constantly on the road, and the ability to be home is like, I don't even know what that feels. I've never been home this long, I think, in my adult life. And I welcome that, because I'm grounding myself and I'm grounding my company. I mean, we're on Zoom calls all the time, like probably too much. And it's making us like really dive into the minutia and the systems and look, you know, at the good, the bad, and the ugly, like what's working and what's not working. And as you know, sometimes we're moving so fast as entrepreneurs that we don't get that time to like just look at where we are and evaluate it. And so the gift, I would say, like absolute gift in this is to look at, okay, how can we do that better? And in the case of a pivot, I mean, I actually, it's kind of bizarre to say this, and I'm like off the cuff, but I actually enjoy pivoting, because I think it means like, okay, got it. Let's get better. Let's get better. Let's get better.
Do you see a different sales strategy for you yourself because of changes in the last little bit? I mean, you said you're hitting your numbers. Obviously, you were able to work around things that you had in the plan. And do you see that continuing? And can you just give a couple of concrete hints to people? Because I think it's a great lesson.
Sure. So, okay, perfect example. We haven't been able to ship new products since we launched Yes And. We had 15 styles basically that came in February for our launch, and we haven't had a single new product. And now it's, you know, middle of May, and we're still working off of 15 styles that we brought, relatively small quantities. We've sold out of a bunch of stuff. So what did we do? We took the bodies of Yes And, we kind of rejigged them in terms of like sketches, and presented them to QVC and said, hey, let's connect the dots from home to apparel. And all of a sudden we got a lot of excitement for this home shopping, you know, business model that makes so much sense right now. They latched on, and now I don't want to get ahead of myself because we don't have POs yet, but so far so good. And the things we're talking about are pretty significant. So we're trying to figure out how to leverage what we have to drive incremental opportunity. And even within MetaWear, I think a lot of companies right now realize they have to pull back on their spends. And so they're looking to outsource their sustainability efforts, because it's not even about staying ahead anymore. It's about not being left behind. You know, sustainable fashion has become an imperative. It's no longer a choice. You know, retailers and brands in the fashion business, like they know if they don't embed sustainability and organic and, you know, ethical manufacturing into their models, they're going to be out of the game. I mean, JCPenney, J. Crew, I mean, the number of retailers that have gone bankrupt in the last month.
Well, I was that you got, I want to ask that question, and then we have one from Sean here. So I mean, we have watched the apparel, the retail side just absolutely belly up here. Even, I mean, obviously we had Danny Meyer on a couple of weeks ago, and clearly in hospitality, we've had the same phenomenon. How does that inform what you're going to be doing going forward? Are you now planning to be a mostly e-com company? Is QVC going to be, you hope, an anchor? I mean, I'm hearing these lessons. I just want to try to get you to put your finger right on them.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I would say that, you know, the business models, the disruption that's happening in apparel right now is probably twofold. One has to do with technology, right? So we're looking at every which way we can embed technology into our business, everything from blockchain, you know, taking the the platform of source to story that MetaWare is really built on,
Mm-hmm.
and infusing that onto like a literally storytelling at the QR code level,
Mm-hmm.
but also for our brands and retail partners, you know, supporting them in co-creating that kind of new paradigm.
Yeah.
All the way through to the fact that we just launched Yes and Farm to Home, and now we're going to be putting a lot of focus on those models as, you know, direct to consumer, farm to finished fashion, source to story, and do a lot more of the online marketing, digital, social. I mean, look, I'm an advocate, you know, of social marketing, social media, and an influencer for a lot of companies. But I would say, you know, now it's like more than ever before, we're connecting with influencers, celebrities, brands, creating partnerships, NGOs, and looking at like, how do we join forces, and all tides can rise together if we, you know, if we all are in this together. So the Yes and business model has evolved to a place where we're super fired up about it. I mean, originally we were like, hey, are we going to also do wholesale? Are we also going to do this? Now it's like, nope, we're going to stay virtual, and we're going to do more virtual summits. Forget these live events. We're looking at fashion shows for the fall that are going to be virtual fashion shows. We're looking at every which way and every touch point to reinvent ourselves as a company to capitalize on and support this new reality we're all living.
And I want to ask about the new reality, but do you have concerns about price now as you look ahead with so many jobless and so forth? Do you feel like sustainability is your ticket? You know, it's, people ask me this about organic, right? And what I see is that the organic bubble has doubled in size, right?
Yes.
Many more people have connected food and health. And yes, we're heading into more and more economic duress here, but the audience has grown. Is that, would you answer that the same way in terms of your space?
I would say that now a lot of companies in the fashion business are in survival mode, and they're drinking the proverbial sustainability Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And they're trying to think about like, how do I do this? What do I do? And it's not easy. I mean, navigating a supply chain, as I spoke to earlier, is quite complicated and overwhelming to a lot of companies. And the fact that our business model supports that and is all about co-creation, I think we're at the right place at the right time. And so we're going to definitely, you know, up the ante on that, and our reach on that to help support, because ultimately we're a solution provider. And I think every good entrepreneur has to have a hat on that says, what's the problem and how can I be a part of the solution?
Well, okay. So Sean's asking about a big problem in your space, and you've touched it, but let's give you a chance to answer directly. He says, certifications have their limitations addressing labor and human rights issues in global value chains, including fair trade. What are your thoughts on the way forward to improve decent work in the global apparel value chains, from farm to closet or farm to home, and in the collection and repurposing cycles?
Yeah. So 5 years ago, a consumer movement was born as a result of the Rana Plaza Bangladesh catastrophe, when 1,133 people lost their lives in a factory in Bangladesh overnight, like literally in a split second, because of unsafe working conditions. So that movement was already started, the fashionrevolution.org movement. And I would say now, because so many brands and retailers have tried to run from their paying their factories for the product that their factories made, and all of a sudden hashtag pay up was born, like really putting pressure and changing the fast fashion movement to slow down fashion. And slowing down fashion means thinking about the 5 Ps, you know, people, planet, profit, passion, and purpose. And the people are they're the root of this whole movement. I mean, 1 out of every 6 people on this planet touches the garment industry from a professional level at some point, right? So we need to now look at the social part of fashion is equally as, if not more important than the environmental part. I mean, obviously I'm an environmental activist and I'm very passionate about soil health. I'm a soil junkie, organic advocate. But I would say this, the GOT standard, we just came out with 6.0, our 6th version of the standard. And it's the first time we really layered in pretty hardcore all the social, you know, fair pay, safe working conditions, no child labor, all those. So we're bridging the people on the planet now in a way that, you know, a standard like GOTS is all encompassing. And then you have Cradle to Cradle, which of course measures material health, material reuse, renewable energy, water stewardship, and social justice, the people as well. So I think a lot of the standards and the collaborations that you're seeing out there are focusing now on, it's not one or the other, it's both, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if there's a thread that I've sort of followed through these 2 months, it's been enhanced awareness, you know, that first of all, shit can happen, right? You know, the worst can happen, and it's for a lot of people, it has been that, but also much greater empathy for folks in need, healthcare workers, people in the front lines, people who've lost their jobs, and so on and so forth. And I'd like to think this is a hopeful opportunity. Certainly another for me has been what I alluded to a moment ago, that, you know, people have figured out we are what we eat, we are what we wear. The number one way to keep your family safe and keep their immune system safe is to avoid unnecessary exposure to chemicals. And I think you're absolutely right. I think most people have not connected those dots with fashion, despite your efforts. So, you know, the combination of social media, of pivoting, of new ways of reaching people. I mean, bringing the message to QVC is, you know, really going to the heart of the beast, right? Let me, I like,
just want to add, you know, something that I just kind of make, you know, seeing you on the screen and, you know, in 2000, I want to say at least, gosh, probably 15 plus years ago, when you and I went to the UK and spent the weekend with Prince Charles, with if you remember, the title of that weekend was Connecting the Consumer to Organic Agriculture.
Mm.
And that was like the very beginning of me trying to talk about organic textiles and why it mattered, but always sort of with that, like, it's all about education. We have to educate along the way, because people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, and believe me, Marci, I promise you didn't have to say that, because you've exuded it for the last hour and a quarter. And what I like to do at the end of our time is replay some of the things, some of the key takeaways I had. So let me do this for a couple minutes. And if I missed anything really key, let me know. You had some wonderful quotes, but from others, but one is business is never a straight line. I think that's a really important, and you've lived that. And of course, in your case, eco lifestyle is much more than just about food. It's really a 360-degree, as you said, a way of thinking. I love your line, or the line that you quoted, work is love made visible. That was just, you know, may we all take that one in. Relationships are everything. You got that from Horst, but you've memorialized that into your own business, all of your team having stock, having ownership. And the corollary too, nip off the weak links. If somebody isn't working out, cut your losses, and that reset, or put those clothes back on the shelf. And during the rebirth that you experienced, that transition that Under the Canopy really made you who you are today. And I just think that's so powerful for people to hear, that, you know, that's that old line, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. All about pivoting, being flexible, you know, don't be locked in. I thought that was really critical. And again, I want to underscore, I think you're, you know, something I heard you saying very clearly is that the early going was partly you were caught in, you know, you needed the funding. You were taking it from whoever would offer it, and you said, don't just do that. Partly you didn't do your own tire kicking, but, you know, I think you can forgive yourself. Probably you assumed the best because you're a good person and you assumed it. But what I'm hearing, and I was trying to pull it out of you, and I don't know that you fully see it yet, but I'm going to play it to you in our final half minute here, is a different kind of financing strategy. You know, like you said, all these young people, money's being thrown, you know, Expo is now all about the suits, right? So many investors, but keep it lean, pivot to alternative channels where you don't have to put as much, be so leveraged, out of control. properly reward your people with stock, with long-term investments. So that it's not just about, the grab bag of cash. And it seems to me that you may have laid a really powerful foundation for this fabulous chapter you're in. So did I miss any key lessons?
Plant a new seed every day.
Okay.
That's like something I live by. And
Yep.
serving others is serving yourself.
Man,
So
there you go.
service is not and I do serve on a lot of boards, but I would say that every day my life is about service, because I'm always thinking about, how do we win-win? How does, our collaboration create added value for both of us? I think that is so critical.
Well, work is love made visible. No better way to end, I can think.
And we're all gardeners in that realm.
Yes.
We have to just
Thank you for all the seeds and the organic fertilizing you're doing and all the inspiration. And really thank you for modeling resilience and drive. It's, this is how we save the world. Margaret Mead was right, and you're certainly doing your part. So best of health for you and yours. And thank you for helping us close out this wonderful series. Everyone else, thank you for being with us. We will pick up again in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Namaste. Wear the change we wish to see.
Indeed. Thanks, Marci. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye-bye.